My wildcard chip is active for game week 6. We've got a lot to cover in this one. I'm going to go over why I've picked the players I've picked and why I've left certain players out. So let's get straight into it. Okay, we're not going to look at how I got on in game week 5 like I usually would because nobody wants to see my trash team. Although actually last week I did alright. I bench boosted, 60 points, big green arrow. So we've got projected goals and projected clean sheets for the next 5 weeks on here. I just wanted to go over this quickly before we get into the team because it shows some reasons why I've picked some players. If you don't know about them, Solio Analytics, solioanalytics.com, check them out. I'm sure you have, I'm sure you know them. Man City are quite clearly top for projected goals, as you can see, 10.78 over the 5 weeks. That is quite front heavy, given that they play Burnley at home in game week 6. I will want triple Man City on wildcard. It is pretty simple. Arsenal are third here. Again, I will want some Arsenal players. I'll want triple Arsenal. You'll also notice in here, Arsenal are quite clearly top for clean sheets or projected clean sheets. This week isn't the best for them. I mean, it's Newcastle away, not the greatest of fixtures, but after that, their fixtures are fantastic and their clean sheet odds are fantastic. Liverpool are in amongst this, so you can see they're second for projected goals, third for projected clean sheets. They're not a team I'm looking to target here, really. I think that the reason they're here is mainly based on team strength rather than fixtures, because Liverpool's fixtures aren't quite as good as City's or Arsenal's. And obviously, we can't just fill up our teams with players from the top teams because they're expensive. So you can't target all the teams. Liverpool don't quite have as good fixtures as the other two, so I won't really be targeting them. Chelsea's fixtures are okay as well. I mean, from game week 9, they get really good, but they're okay from game week 6 as well. Chelsea are 4th for projected goals, and they are 5th for clean sheets as well. I'm not huge on the Chelsea defence personally, but I don't mind it if you go for one of their options. I'm just not really sure who's that nailed, apart from Cucurella. Even he's not that nailed, really, and he's very expensive. The Newcastle defence is looking good this season, and that's why they're 4th for projected clean sheets. But again, there's just not particularly a nailed guy at a good price. If Dan Burn was like 4.5 million, maybe, but I just don't really love any of the options there. The Spurs attack also looks pretty good. I mean, they're 5th for projected goals. Outside of Kudos and maybe Xavi Simons, to be fair. I don't mind Xavi Simons. He's just at an awkward price point. So I don't mind going with a Kudos on wildcard. Man United are in there. You'll see Bruno Fernandes in my team when we bring my team up. Apart from that, Bournemouth do find their way in here. Not particularly high up, but they are 10th. Bournemouth don't actually find their way into the clean sheets. Everton do find their way into the clean sheets. They're actually 6th here, which is pretty high up. I mean, last season they were a pretty good defence, but the thing I don't like about them is that they heavily rely on Branthwaite being fit. We saw last season when Branthwaite wasn't fit and playing, their defence wasn't great. Then when he came back, they were a good defence. Again, this season, he's not been fit to start the season, and they haven't been a great defence. The underlying numbers haven't been very good at all. However, he is due back soon. The one thing I don't really like about that is I don't really like that the team's defence is going to be solely reliant on one player being fit. Not big on that, but we have, of course, seen Tarkowski is a defensive contribution beast. So he is a genuinely good pick. Apart from that, it's the usual kind of suspects to see in here. Bournemouth aren't very high. Then Leeds are in here, though, which is actually quite an interesting one for the clean sheets anyway. From game week 8, they've got a couple of really nice fixtures. So I do think we can go with cheap defenders from Leeds and potentially stack as a cheap midfielder. Apart from that, like I say, not much to write home about. You will see in the draft that we look at in a second, I've got quite a few players from these teams. So let's get into that. Right, on to the draft now. And we're starting off in the goalkeeper position. You'll see that this draft at the top left has 0.3 million in the bank. Now, this could be different for you if you've got different team value. My team value is probably quite bad, given that I carried Wirtz, I've carried Watkins, not been a great start. But I do have David Raya in this team. I just think, as we saw, the Arsenal defence is so elite compared to other defences. We've seen it to start this season. They obviously didn't keep a clean sheet against Man City, but Man City and Haaland are just one of the best attacks they'll come up against all season. In general, the Arsenal defence is just incredible. Dubravka's obviously the bench keeper here. Don't really need to explain that one. He's the only playing 4 million goalkeeper. I have thought about going with a cheaper goalkeeper here in Petrovic. if you've watched my channel before, you'll know I love a cheap goalkeeper. I hate spending money in the goalkeeper position. So I usually go with a 4.5 million option and a 4 million option. But I just think the Arsenal defence is so good. And what you'll also see, and we've seen so far, is that defensive contributions have kind of changed things, given that you don't need to spend as much money in the defence positions. You don't need to buy like these Trent Alexander-Arnolds. There isn't really an attacking fullback that's absolutely cooking at the moment. So you can actually find cheap DEFCON defenders to have in your team. So I do think that means you can spend a little bit more in the goalkeeper region. The only other more expensive goalkeeper I like is Donnarumma. That's only if you wanted to go with outfield players from Arsenal, 3 of them. So you could go Gabriel, Saka, Gyökeres, or you could just go double in defence. I don't really get a point in that because Saliba is more expensive than Raya. But yeah, Donnarumma is an option, but these are the goalkeepers that I will pretty much be going with. Onto the defenders. Now, this is where this whole team in general is pretty template. I kind of don't like the term template, in that if it's template, it's probably good. Template is seen as like a negative thing, but the reason something's template is probably because it's very, very good. Now, Senesi falls under that category. He is in almost everyone's team, almost everyone's wildcard team, and for good reason. The Bournemouth defence has actually looked quite good, which we didn't think it would, given they lost a load of players. They've kept, I believe, 3 clean sheets in 5 games. Madness, to be fair. He's also a joke for DEFCON, we know that. He's hit DEFCON in every single game so far. Gabriel, I mean, I don't really need to explain him either. I just talked about how good the Arsenal defence is. That's why I've gone for the double up here. And also, next week they play West Ham at home. And West Ham have been horrific at defending set pieces. So Gabriel could genuinely grab a couple in that game. We know how good Arsenal are from set pieces, or certainly last season. They haven't really showed it as much recently. But we know how good they can be from set pieces. So Gabriel could be in for a haul next week. Anderson is another DEFCON beast. I think the Fulham defence is a little bit underrated. I talk about that in quite a few other videos as well. Last season they were like 6th for XGC. So they just do seem to concede the odd goal now and then. Like last weekend against Brentford, they just conceded a goal out of... It was just a pure mistake. They didn't really look like they were troubled apart from that. So they're a good defence, and Anderson has hit DEFCON in every single game but one. He's 4.5 million. Then we've got Chris Richards on the bench. Now again, he's a pretty good option for DEFCON, but also the Crystal Palace defence is really good. So there's not really much more I need to say about him. People seem to like Gehi instead of him. Gehi does show a bit more attacking threat in the opposition box, but I just don't think he's worth the extra like 0.2 or 0.3, whatever it is now. I think Chris Richards is just a good option. Given that he's not going to play every single week for me, it's kind of fine that he just sits on the bench. And he rotates really nicely with quite a lot of these other guys. I'll show you at the end a little bit of a future look into the coming game weeks and how these defenders rotate, because I think it's pretty important when you're looking at a game week 1 team or a wildcard team, you look 4, 5, 6 game weeks in advance to see how the defenders rotate, because there's no point in picking all the defenders you like if then 2 weeks down the line, 3 weeks down the line, Richards plays Arsenal, Anderson plays City, Senesi plays Liverpool, all in the same week. Just doesn't make any sense. Now, the defender that I want to make a big point about choosing here is Mukiele. He's not in loads of people's drafts. I think in general, this is going to be a point about the Sunderland defence, because there's quite a few 4 million options that are good now. Obviously, Esteve probably wouldn't want to double up with Dubravka and Esteve at this point. Esteve's not bad for defensive contributions, but Burnley just are the worst defence in the league, statistically so far anyway, underlying numbers wise. Obviously, you've got Goodmanson, Joe Rodon from Leeds. Joe Rodon does look a pretty good option. He looks quite good for DEFCON as well. And at 4 million, I don't mind it. We saw that Leeds have got some quite good fixtures coming up soon. However, Sunderland, they look like, I mean, don't get me wrong, they're like 7th in the league. That is a bit inflated, but they still look like not a bad defence at all. Not only that, Mukiele and Alderete, and even Ballard when he plays, they are DEFCON beasts. Mukiele's hit DEFCON in every single game he's played. He's only played 3 though. He's not played all the games, but he is an absolute beast for DEFCON. Now, the other reason that I like Sunderland defenders, especially this week, and you'll notice he's on the bench for me, but I think that will change, to be honest. If I went with this exact draft, I would probably play him over Anderson. Now, we've obviously seen that Aston Villa haven't really been great going forward. I mean, that's putting it lightly. They've been terrible going forward. They've only scored 1 goal this season, which makes Anderson a really good pick, obviously. But Mukiele this week, Nottingham Forest are actually the second worst team this season at defending set pieces. We know that the worst team is West Ham by like a country mile. But the second worst is Mukiele. Now, Mukiele. The second worst is Nottingham Forest. Now, Mukiele, Alderete, and even Ballard if he plays, but it looks like it's going to be Mukiele and Alderete. They are beasts in the air. Absolute beasts. We saw it against Aston Villa in the last game. We've seen it in all of their games. They're a joke. They look really well drilled from set pieces as well. From the very first game in the league against West Ham, they really had a routine to dominate West Ham in the box from corners, and they did it really well. So Mukiele looks a joke, Alderete looks a joke, but also Mukiele is a joke at these long throws. I mean, we've seen Coyote do it from Brentford. Mukiele also does it from Nottingham Forest. So I can't tell you who's going to score which of the Sunderland players. It could be Mukiele, it could be Alderete, it could be Ballard if he starts, it could be one of the forwards. But it wouldn't surprise me one bit if Sunderland grabbed a goal from a set piece this weekend. But also, a more general point, Mukiele does rotate really nicely with all these players, as we'll see at the end. I am missing Tarkowski here. Now, don't get me wrong, I think he is a great option. He's obviously hit DEFCON in every single game. He's got West Ham this week, which could mean that, again, we just mentioned how bad West Ham are from set pieces. He could be a threat in the air from set pieces. It does look more like kind of Keane is probably the target from these set pieces, but that doesn't, I mean, West Ham are that bad that Tarkowski could quite easily grab a goal. They don't look great going forward either, West Ham, so a clean sheet could be on the cards. So I do think he's a really, really good option. I just think that 5.5 million is expensive. That's the reason I haven't gone with him for a bad defence. Now, I did mention that obviously Branthwaite coming back soon will make them a better defence, and I think that will be true. They've also got good fixtures coming up, so I do just think he's a generally good pick. But you'll see there is a route that I can go with him. There's 2 players that I can swap around in this draft, and that would make the draft even more template. But I'll talk about it at the end, those 2 players. I am thinking that I could go with Tarkowski. I just prefer this at the moment. Now, onto the midfielders, and Semenyo, I don't need to talk about him too much. Their fixtures for the next couple are really good. After that, around game week 10-ish, they get a little bit worse, but he's looking like he could actually just be fixture proof. They don't have any European fixtures to congest and mean that their kind of fixture schedule gets congested. So if he's on penalties, then we can just play him every week. He's pretty fixture proof if that's the case. We'll skip Foden for now because we'll talk about him in a second. Bruno Fernandes again, he is just a fixture proof guy. He's not anything great to watch. When you watch Man United, he's a bit frustrating because he plays really deep for the most part. Against Chelsea, he started really deep. He did end up going up front, but I think that was more of a game state thing given all the red cards. I don't think we can read into that too much. He's on penalties. We know that Man United get quite a few penalties compared to other teams. He's just got so many routes to points. We saw him hit DEFCON as well. So there's not anything bad about him apart from the fact he plays for Man United. But I just think he is one that I'll definitely start with, but there is a world where I could move him on in a few weeks' time, and I'll talk about that as well in a bit. Then I've got Reinders, so he, for me, is just an absolutely no-brainer pick. I don't get how he isn't in every single team in FPL at the moment. He's 5.5 million, he's more than that now, of course, but that's a joke. For me, he would be in my team if he was around 7 million. I don't see how he's not just an absolute no-brainer pick. He's getting fantastic minutes. That was the one worry we had pre-season, that his minutes wouldn't be there. His minutes, he's played every single minute there is to play. So I just don't get what there is to not like about this guy. Their fixtures are really good now as well. And that's why I've got Phil Foden. He is the one that is a risk here. Now, since coming back from injury, he started against Man United. He grabbed an assist in that game, I think it was, and he played 90 minutes. He then played midweek against Napoli. He grabbed a goal in that game, I think, and played 90 minutes. He then played against Arsenal, and he played about 67 minutes, I think it was, before coming off. He then, which wasn't great, started last night in the League Cup. I didn't really expect him to start in that game, and that does make him a bit of a risk. The only other player who started in that game, who is kind of a first team player at the moment, was O'Reilly. And they both came off at the same time. It was around 75 minutes, I think. That does put me off slightly from Phil Foden. However, he is literally the one punt in this team. It's barely even a punt. I mean, the fixtures are so good. Going forward, they're a joke. Phil Foden has looked really good. He got a goal and an assist in the League Cup as well. So he's performing well there too. I just think I may be put off by this pick as we get closer to the deadline. Or we may even get team news. Who knows? But yeah, there is... I'll talk about it at the end. But there is a little switcheroo I can do between two players. That means I don't start with Foden if I get scared. On the bench, I've got Stack. Now, again, I'm not enthralled by him, to be honest. There's just a bit of a lack of other options here. Now, I could go for Dewsbury Hall because he's got West Ham at home this week. That would give me a benching headache, though. Not only that, he's also on 4 yellow cards. So I don't particularly fancy going there. If I need him in a couple of weeks, then he might be suspended and I can't use him, which isn't ideal. Stack is a bit of a weird one. He seems to play in different roles in different games. So there's some games where he looks great for DEFCON and he's hit DEFCON in a couple of games. There's some games where he's playing much further forward and he is not picking up DEFCON, but his attacking underlying numbers are much better. So you don't really know what you're going to get from him week on week. I think it kind of does depend if Tanaka plays or not. I mean, I'm no Leeds tactical expert here, but it does seem to be that way. He's on some set pieces though, as we saw at the weekend, and what a free kick that was, by the way. So he will be on my bench most weeks. You'll see with the rest of this team, he'll be on my bench almost every week, so I don't really need him. Again, this could be someone else. I've only got 0.3 in the bank, so I can't get to like a Caicedo or something. He's a really good option. There is obviously Elliot Anderson to go for. This position could be anyone really. At the moment, I just like Stack the best. Then on to the forwards, it's Gyökeres, João Pedro, Haaland. Haaland will be the captain this week, of course. I've got the vice on Semenyo. That could be anyone, really. Gyökeres, I'm not huge, as I mentioned earlier. I'm not great on this fixture this week. Newcastle away doesn't seem like the best fixture, to be honest. Going forward, it's great. I mean, next week, it's West Ham at home. The fixtures from then onwards are just fantastic. João Pedro, with Palmer looking like he's going to be out now, João Pedro is just, I think, quite a safe option. His minutes should be safe in the league at least. And I don't think he'll be on penalties, given that Enzo took the last one when Palmer was off the pitch. But I think even without penalties, he's just a pretty safe pick. And then Haaland, I don't really need to go into that. So line-up-wise this week, like I say, I would want to fit Mukiele into this team somewhere now. The way I could do that, I could actually fit him in instead of Gabriel. However, the Newcastle attack has been pretty bad. I could fit him in instead of Anderson. Again, the Villa attack's been even worse. I could go proper rogue here and just fit him in over Gyökeres. That feels wrong, but I do think I need to find a way to start Mukiele this week. Now, the little switcheroo that I mentioned, and again, this would make my team even more template than it already is, but it would be Foden and one of the defenders, so either Anderson, Richards, Mukiele, probably not Mukiele, Anderson or Richards. It'd be Foden and one of them to Tarkowski and Ndai. Ndai just seems like a really, really safe option. I don't really think there's anything bad about him. He's on penalties, the minutes are great. The Everton attack actually looks quite good at the moment, which is rare for them. So he does make this team much safer. Tarkowski makes this team much safer. But I just think with these fixtures for City, if I do think that Foden's going to start this weekend, then I think I have to go with him. I just need to have a bit more thought on whether I think Foden will start this weekend. Now, I may need to consult some people that know a bit more about City than me. If you are a City fan, you're watching this, drop it in the comments whether you think he starts or not, because I'm a bit torn at the moment. I think he will, but who knows? So that's the one change I'm looking at here. Ndai and Tarkowski in for Foden and either Anderson or Richards. But what we're going to do now is have a look at how this team kind of rotates and looks for the next 5 weeks, because it's all well and good picking a team for this week and the fixtures for this week, but you don't want to be using transfer after your wildcard. So let's have a look at how this team looks in the following 5 weeks. Okay, so I've got Game Week 6 up here. This is FPL.team. If you don't know about it, then get to know, because it's an unbelievable tool. You can basically plan all your transfers and fixtures through following weeks. Really cool. FPL.team, check it out. This is Game Week 6. I'll put Mukiele in there over Anderson. I will probably find a way to start Mukiele. I don't know who it would be for, but he would most likely start. And we know what the team is like this week. Now, on to Game Week 7. So the team looks pretty good again. Mukiele would be benched this week because it's Man United away. Anderson, I don't hate Bournemouth away as a fixture, but I also, if I can avoid playing Semenyo or any player against the defender, then I will avoid that. Same with Mukiele, I've got Bruno in here, so I'd rather not play an attacker versus a defender. That's where Chris Richards comes in. Like I said, what you need to do is look at your 5 defenders and how they rotate for the next 4, 5, 6 weeks. That's kind of what we're going to do here, but with the rest of the players as well. So again, I think, don't get me wrong, it's not like a perfect fixture, Everton away, but it's definitely good enough that Richards can play in this week. The Arsenal boys obviously have West Ham at home, great fixture. The City boys have Brentford away, great fixture. Their defence looks rough at the moment. João Pedro has Liverpool at home, not ideal, but I think he is kind of somewhat fixture proof. And then it's Fulham at home for Semenyo and Senesi. Sunderland at home for Bruno Fernandes. He's a captaincy option in this week, as is Gyökeres. We'll talk about that when we come to that week anyway. On to Game Week 8. This is where Arsenal play Fulham. So kind of an okay fixture for Arsenal, but that means that Anderson's on the bench here. Also, Bruno Fernandes plays Liverpool away. Not the best fixture. Now, I could start Anton Stack with Burnley away over Bruno Fernandes. Again, that's a decision for Game Week 8. Wouldn't feel great about that, I don't think. The City boys have a good fixture with Everton at home. João Pedro, Nottingham Forest away. And again, this is where the rotation comes in nicely, because Anderson, I wouldn't want to play this week, given it's Arsenal. Richards, I don't hate playing him. I don't hate the Bournemouth at home fixture, but again, it's clashes with Semenyo. Whereas Mukiele has Wolves at home. Fantastic fixture. So the rotation works really nicely here. Then, Game Week 9 is Crystal Palace at home for Arsenal. Again, Richards would be on the bench that week. Then the rest of the team, Bruno Fernandes has Brighton at home, not bad. Senesi and Semenyo have Nottingham Forest at home, not bad at all. City have Aston Villa away, fine with that as well. João Pedro has Sunderland at home. So this is where I said, Game Week 9, Chelsea's fixtures get a bit good from. Stack has West Ham at home, so I could actually play him somewhere, but I don't think I need to. And then Mukiele doesn't have a good fixture because it's Chelsea. This is where Anderson comes in. Now, Newcastle away isn't the best fixture by any means here, but the Newcastle attack hasn't looked that great so far. The one thing that will help them is that Gordon comes back this week, I believe. So they will probably be a little bit better now. But I don't think that's the worst fixture for Anderson there. And then the last week we'll look at is Game Week 10, where Arsenal play Burnley. Unbelievable fixture. Then this is where Senesi has a bad fixture. So Senesi has Man City away, but Anderson and Richards both have good fixtures. So Richards has got Brentford at home. Anderson has got Wolves at home. Mukiele actually has Everton at home, which I don't hate. This is where, Senesi and Gabriel play most weeks in this team, but this is one week where he maybe doesn't play. The other guys cover him nicely. Reinders and Foden have Bournemouth at home, as does Haaland. João Pedro has Tottenham away. Not the best fixture because the Spurs defence is kind of good. I still don't mind playing him in that. And then Bruno Fernandes has Forest away. So yeah, that is how it looks for coming weeks. If we just go back to the team here. So another omission that you'll notice is Spurs. Spurs have been great. I've been on double Spurs defence this time. I've had Van de Ven and Porro. It's been brilliant for me. And Spurs do have a few good fixtures. It's Wolves at home this week. And I could go with a Spurs defender in here. So I've considered doing Van de Ven instead of Anderson and Richards. I have that much in the bank to do. I've also already got Van de Ven and I've taken his price rises, so it wouldn't even take 0.2 for me. But the rotations just don't work as well. I wouldn't end up playing him that much. I'd play him this week probably, and then I'd probably play him in Game Week 8. But outside that, I wouldn't really play him much. The rotations just work much better with Anderson or Richards, or if I go Tarkowski, they work better with him as well. So that is the only reason I haven't gone with a Spurs defender. Now, the switcheroo I mentioned where I was talking about Foden and a defender to Tarkowski and Ndai. Ndai could also be Kudos here. But again, his goal threat worries me a little bit. I do think he's a fantastic option, given the fixtures as well. But his goal threat worries me a little bit. It's much harder to get a haul from assists. I think you do have to get 2 assists to haul, really. Whereas 1 goal can get you quite close to 10 points. An assist you can end up on like a 5-pointer from 1 assist. That's my only worry. I think I just prefer Ndai a little bit over him because of penalties as well. Yeah, this is the team. Let me know what you think about it in the comments. Let me know if you have got any questions on your team. But that's all for this one. Do hit like, do subscribe, and I will see you in the next one.